does the Quran say that you use the Quran to tell what the Injil is?
All right, let's see him solve the Islamic dilemma.
So if you go to chapter 20 of the Quran, verse 133, bayyinatun means clarification over the previous scriptures.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, they demand if only he could bring us a sign from his Lord. Have they not received a confirmation? But the same word can also mean a clarification of what is in the early scripture.
It says confirmation.
I don't know about that.
Ibn Kathir mentions the same exact verse, same exact chapter. If we go into Tafsir, anyone can open up. So, yeah, the Quran contains information about the people of the past that tells of their events from times long ago, and it agrees with the authentic information in the previous books concerning these matters. The Quran is supervisor over these books. It verifies what is correct and explains the mistakes that were falsely placed in them.
Yikes.
Why are you taking it to mean that it's like fixing it when it doesn't say that?
Because the earliest exegetical work, such as Ibn Kathir, clarifies what is meant by it.
I'll admit, this is very convincing if you don't know anything about what's written in the Quran or the Tafsirs. See, Muslims are so desperate to get out of the Islamic dilemma, they've deployed their all-reliable tactic of what I call Tafsir al-Trust Me, bro. This is when you cherry-pick one of the many Tafsirs for interpretation that fits what you want the Quran to say and state that interpretation is absolute fact. But I'm going to show why appealing to a tafsir is a slippery slope since they often disagree with each other. Now, Ibn Kathir, who he was appealing to, was a 14th century scholar who came 700 years after the time of Muhammad. However, he's not the earliest commentator, nor is he the only commentator out there. But let's see what happens when we look at other commentators and their tafsirs for the same verse. For starters, let's look at Ibn Abbas, who was the cousin of Muhammad. He said this verse had to do with Muhammad bringing an exposition of the former scripture since they contained the description of him. So there's nothing here about the Quran cleaning up errors in the previous scriptures. Now what about Al-Tabari, who was a highly respected scholar from the 10th century? He said this verse was about explaining the scriptures that talked about Allah destroying the nations who asked for signs and still disbelieved. Still nothing about cleaning up errors in the previous scriptures. What about Jalalain, who came 100 years after Ibn Kathir? He said this was about the tales contained in the Quran relating to past communities and the details of their destruction for denying the messengers. Again, still nothing about the Quran coming to clean up errors in the previous scriptures. So needless to say, the interpretations are very diverse and not as simple as he's making out to be. But he decided to cherry-pick the one interpretation that agreed with him and stated it as absolute fact when in actuality, that's far from the truth. Even if what he was saying was true, this would make the Quran contradict itself since the Quran confirms the previous scriptures 19 times. And it tells Jews and Christians to judge by the Torah and Gospel. And it tells Jews and Christians they have nothing to stand upon unless they stand upon the Torah and the Gospel. So this would make no sense if the previous scriptures were corrupted and the Quran came to come and fix the mess. So Muslims, cherry-picking tafsirs is not going to solve the Islamic dilemma.